Daniel Harris was the youngest CEO in the history of his tech company, Neurasoft. At 32, he'd already made millions, revolutionized the way businesses approach artificial intelligence, and even graced the covers of business magazines. He was used to commanding boardrooms, leading innovative teams, and making decisions that could impact the future of the industry. But life has a way of throwing unexpected curveballs. One cold Wednesday morning, Daniel's entire world flipped upside down. It started with a typical morning at Neurasoft's headquarters. He'd just finished a breakfast of oatmeal and coffee when his assistant, Lucy, knocked on his door. "Mr. Harris," she said, her tone unusually grave, "there's a situation. One of our major investors is pulling out, and there's an emergency meeting scheduled for this afternoon. We need you to handle it." Daniel sighed, his mind already racing with potential solutions. He was used to being the one in control, the one with all the answers, but there was no time to prepare. This was the kind of high-pressure situation that demanded immediate attention. As he grabbed his coat and briefcase, he heard Lucy call after him. "Don't forget, we're launching the new office initiative today, too." "Right," he muttered. "I'll be there in a few hours." But the universe had other plans. On his way to the meeting, Daniel's car broke down in the middle of downtown. The mechanic would take hours, and with no other options, Daniel decided to catch the subway. He'd never taken public transportation in years. It felt like a step back in time, away from the sleek, high-powered world of tech CEOs. When he stepped onto the crowded subway train, Daniel was immediately hit with a sense of discomfort. The car was packed with commuters, none of whom looked anything like the high-powered business types he interacted with daily. He clutched his briefcase tightly, scanning the space for a seat, but there were none. And then it happened. A middle-aged woman in a faded sweater, struggling with a child, accidentally bumped into him. She looked up and, seeing his finely tailored suit, apologized profusely. "Sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." "No problem," Daniel said, offering a polite smile. His annoyance was growing, but he kept it in check. He wasn't used to being treated like just another person in the crowd. The woman shuffled around trying to get her child to stop crying when Daniel's phone buzzed. It was an urgent text from Lucy. "Investor is about to walk. You need to talk to him right now." Daniel's pulse quickened. His mind raced, trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. But as the train lurched and jolted, he lost his balance, stumbling into the woman and nearly knocking her over. "Watch where you're going," she snapped, her voice sharp. It caught him off guard. In all his years of high-flying business deals and elite meetings, he'd never been spoken to like that. His instinct was to fire back, to assert his dominance. But something stopped him. He caught sight of her tired, worn face, her hands tightly gripping her child. For the first time in what felt like forever, Daniel saw someone struggling, not just with a spilled coffee or a miscalculation in a spreadsheet, but with real life. The kind that didn't come with spreadsheets, solutions, or tech innovations. And for some reason, Daniel felt embarrassed. Here he was, the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, panicking over an investor. And yet this woman, with her child, was doing her best to keep it together in the chaos of everyday life. "Are you all right?" Daniel asked, his voice softening. The woman gave him a puzzled look. "Why do you care?" He shrugged, unsure of why he asked. Maybe it was just the sheer contrast. She didn't care about the problems of billion-dollar deals. She just wanted to get through the day. The train came to a halt, and Daniel, his mind still on the investor meeting, stood up to leave. But before he could exit, the woman stopped him. "Hey, Mr. CEO," she said, her voice sarcastic. "You know, if you're ever in need of advice on how to handle real stress, you might want to try a little less fancy office work and a little more daycare work, that's where the real challenges are. Daniel froze for a moment, realizing she wasn't entirely wrong. Maybe he had become too disconnected from the world he was meant to serve. Maybe he had spent so much time in meetings and executive decisions that he'd forgotten what real struggle felt like. Just before the train doors closed, he turned back to her, offering a sheepish grin. "I'll take that advice to heart." By the time Daniel arrived at the office, the investor had left, but his perspective had shifted. He walked into the meeting, not with the usual bravado or arrogance, but with a grounded humility he hadn't realized he was missing. That afternoon, Daniel made a promise to himself. He'd start spending more time understanding the world outside his corner office. The next day, he showed up at a local daycare center, asking to volunteer for a few hours, eager to understand the real challenges people faced outside the world of tech. The rest of the team thought it was a quirky move, but Daniel never felt more alive.